Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. I was expecting the intro to come up there, but it didn't.
I was just cleaning my glasses.
Yeah. Well, not a surprise with StreamYard, but there you go. So another Friday comes around, Paul. We've got a corker of a show tonight. How are you doing? Have you been?
I'm good, thanks, Chris. It's been a busy day, and I'm really looking forward to tonight's live stream. Let's put it this way: it's one of my. They're all good guests, but this is one of my favourite guests. So seriously, really looking forward to it. But and it's a subject that I love. It's out of all the genres of the unexplained, we're talking cryptids. We might touch on other things, but primarily cryptids. So I'm really looking forward to this guest.
Well, there's always a lot of questions around cryptids, whether it be, paranormal, UFO, all that kind of stuff. And look, for us, as far as we're concerned, there is a connection to all this. I'd be interested to hear Darrell's take on this. I've listened to a lot of Darrell over the years, and and some of his friends' encounters, because he's got some very well-known friends that have had equally some terrifying encounters themselves. So as a group, they must have what a collective amount of stories and knowledge they must have together. So we were just discussing off air, potentially you and I, we've been talking about getting across the pond, haven't we, into
Absolutely.
some of these places, but we were very insistent, like we would with an American guest or an international guest. We would want to be with the right people, and vice versa. If when guests come here to see you, for example, on the cliffs, you want to take them, and they want you to take them because they respect you. So, and it's the same for us.
Absolutely, and I couldn't think of a better group of people, team, to be in these environments with. So, I'm really looking forward to it. Before we get Darrell on, let's just have a look what we've got in chat here, or who we've got in chat. Apologies, people, saying what. We've almost 50 people here, so thank you very much for the support. We've got Algie, Tonya Morrison, Rivington Pike Beast, that's Lee, Magsu, Jojo, Stephen Colling, Stargazer. Let's have a look. Mike Disabled, Welshman, Margaret Webster. And I'm running out of names. I don't know if you can see any more. If not, we'll just do a little bit more of a word count or a name count a little bit deeper into the stream. Big Shoot, Sober Carper, Mary Sinclair, my wife. I can't believe that. Oh, Mary.
She doesn't see enough of you, Paul.
I think she's sick of my face, but she's probably the best place to look at me on here and not in front of her. I'm only joking, Mary. Margaret Webster, let's have a look. Yeah, we've covered it because I can't see any more names in that short list that I've got in front of me.
Cool. All right, mate. Well, without further ado, shall we bring Darrell in?
Let's do that. Well, hey, Darrell, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me once again, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you both, Chris. Pleasure meeting you. Is it Chris? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep, Chris,
and Paul, it's great to see you again.
It is, and for those that don't know, those that have been living under a stone, unless you're really involved with cryptid phenomena, Darrell Denton is a experiencer turned researcher. I think I would term you as best I could. And in your own words, you're just a big old country boy from the state of Tennessee. And
that would be correct, yes.
So what could be better? So welcome to the last transmission. And start at the beginning, Darrell. Give us a bit of a background on Darrell Denton.
Well, as far as being, I grew up in Tennessee, stayed on my grandfather's farm during the summertime and did farming with him, regular farm chores, in the hay field, tobacco field, whatever he asked us to do. And my granddad lived in a very rural part of Tennessee. It's about 90 miles from Nashville. And my family lived about 30 miles north of Nashville, my parents. And my granddad, taught me just about everything I knew. He was pretty much him and my grandmother were like my parents when I was a young boy. And as I got older, I spent most of my summers there. And I had my first encounter there. I'd hunted those woods all my entire life and never seen anything that I didn't know what it was. I mean, there's animals out there that you're cautious of, bear and even the occasional big cats in the woods, but nothing that I wasn't frightened of. I was just leery and cautious around them, but I never had any issues. But in 1992, that all changed with me and my friends and I were. It was about the 5th year we were there on my grandfather's farm, opening week of what we call black powder season for white-tailed deer. And I was hunting in an area I'd never hunted in. It was a little over a mile into the woods that I'd never been that far back hunting. And my grandfather had pointed that location out from his back porch and told me that there would probably be a large antlered deer there, which, we trophy hunt here and in Tennessee and the South. And that's, not only the trophy, but we also cure the meat and that type thing. But I just happened to be back in there the opening day of black powder season, and this thing stepped out of a real tall cane thicket on the river creek bank and scared me literally to death. I'd never seen anything like that. Never thought anything like that existed. If it did, not in my area. So I was quite shocked, and it came out and jumped across the waterway there. I made one leap and just cleared it and landed on a game trail on the top of the waterway there, the edge of the bank, and walked right down, looked right at me, and knew exactly where I was at. I was about 25, 28 feet roughly up in a tree, in my tree stand, and showed me its teeth, and like it was really mad at me. And first of all, I'm shocked to death because I'm thinking, what is this thing? Because I'd never seen anything like that. And then it growls at me and it walks over to the tree limb where I'd put a deer scent rag, what's called a drag rag, and just rip that completely out of the tree, the whole tree limb. And then it walks right back to the spot. It looks at me for a few more minutes. It is really angry. I could just tell by the look it had. It was breathing hard. It was still growling. And then it lets out a scream, yell type that I've never heard anything like that since, and it echoed all down this hollow, and it was so loud it was just ear piercing. And by that time I was just literally trying to catch my breath. I couldn't hardly even breathe. I thought this thing was going to come across the creek bank and just jerk me out of the tree. And I had a 50 caliber muzzleloader rifle, and it had one shot. It's not one you reload quickly. And I debated, do I shoot this thing? Do I let it walk? What do I do? And I made my mind up that I didn't think one bullet would take it down, and just hoped that it walked off, and thank goodness it did.
Darrell, the look that it gave you, when it first encountered you, I'm assuming it knew you were there anyway, but that look, I don't mean it were human. I don't mean it were a Neanderthal, but were they a kind of look like a human like would give somebody in disgust? I'm angry with you, or was it purely animal?
Well, Paul, I've never seen another creature like that since then. I've seen a lot of Bigfoot, a lot of forest people, Sasquatch, and I think there is a difference between all of those. Maybe Bigfoot and Sasquatch are more similar, but this thing that I found out from my grandfather when I made it back to the house, running as fast as I could, thinking this thing was going to chase me down, he called it a wood booger, and it was the ugliest, meanest looking thing I've ever seen. It had one side of its mouth was kind of, the right side facing it was kind of out of contortion, like it had maybe done something to damage that area around its mouth. And its teeth were like human teeth, but they were big block teeth, and the look in its eyes, I wasn't very far from this creature. I was on a 45-degree angle in a tree stand, kind of overlooking it, because I'm straight up in a tree and it's kind of overlooking the creek or the river. I don't know if that's a creek or a river that stream is on, but it's a good sized creek. It's deep, 3 foot deep, roughly in the shallows. And, this thing meant to kill me. I truly thought that it did, but now after all these years, I don't think it did, because I've learned so much in the last 30-something years that if it wanted to kill me, it would have done it. So it wanted to scare me out of its area. I probably interrupted its hunt because there was 3 deer that came out, and that's probably what its intention was, to run me out of there. And it done a good job. I never went back. So
did it put you off for a while hunting then?
Oh, I didn't go in the woods for 7 years. Right. I didn't go in the woods for anything. And And I don't scare real easy because I've been around things that scared me. I had a bear chase me up a tree one time, and I thought it was coming on up, but I didn't get scared like that. I just tried to find a way to outclimb it. I've had other things happen, but it was nothing like what this thing done. I had nightmares over this thing. And first of all, I had to wrap my mind around it. Even after I'd seen it and I knew it actually happened, I had to keep thinking, did I really see that? It was so hard to believe that this thing existed on a farm that I'd practically grown up on, and I'd never seen it. But, after my grandfather told me all the stories about them, and, he'd seen 4 in his lifetime, and he'd heard a lot more than that. He'd heard them scream and yell before at night. And, I'd heard those same yells and stuff, and my grandfather always wrote them off to something else.
You know the scream then, Darrell? Let out this roar, this scream. And obviously that's going to be terrifying. I think I would have been absolutely frightened stiff. Well, I know I would. But did it reverberate your insides as well?
Well, like I said, Paul, at that minute, when I seen that thing, how angry it was at me, and when it let the scream out, I remember it very well, like it just happened. I was trying to get my breath. I could barely breathe. It just completely sent me into like a panic attack thing that I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know if this thing was going to get me or I was going to have to just fire away and hope it killed it. It was a tough decision, and I'm glad I made the decision I did now. But yeah, I mean, realistically, I thought it was over with. I thought it was going to get me. I really did. So I had nightmares. I had nightmares for months after that.
How did it know you were there, Darrell? Did you think it tracked you coming in, or did you? How did it know you were up? Did it smell you?
I remember when I first crossed. I went down behind my grandfather's house. He got me up. I told him the night before, and I was camping with my buddies in a camper that we pulled up there, and parked next to his barn. I had a big, nice camper back that day. I pulled my truck, and we would camp out in it for a week. We'd hunt the whole week up there, and I know for a fact that morning when I went through the gate at my grandfather's house, I have to cross about a 200-yard wide field, and it's mostly sage grass that time of year. And the cows are in that field. It's about 200 yards wide, and it's fenced in. And I had to climb about a 7-foot barbed wire fence, and I did. And I climbed over it and jumped on the ground. And there's leaves all over the ground. And when you jump on those leaves, it makes a pretty loud crunching noise. And when I did, I started going up the hillside. And these hills are steep. I crossed 3 of these hills. Was it 3 or 2? 2 of these hills. And they're like 45-degree angle. They're straight up 200 yards roughly, just straight up almost. And in some areas, they are straight up. But when I was walking up the hill just a little ways, I stopped because I heard something. Of course, I've got a flashlight in my hand, and I've got what's a fanny pack and a part of a pack, and then my muzzleloader rifle. And I heard it. Something was walking to the left of me, and it sounded like bipedal. It sounded like a person walking, and kind of startled me because I thought, was that a person in here? And I looked in that area and shined my light several times, and I didn't see anything. And then I heard it walk again, and I shined again, and I didn't see anything. And I didn't hear it anymore as I went on up the hillside. But it kind of concerned me. I thought, well, could it be a horse in here or some animal? But I knew my grandfather, he lived in a rural area. Nobody hunted on his land but me and my friends or my other cousins when they came up. But he wouldn't allow anybody to hunt in there. And my other friends, we all had spots. We had probably 10-mile area to hunt. There was plenty of places to hunt. We had stands built in trees, and some of them carried climbing stands like I did that particular day. And they were in a completely different area. They weren't even close to me. They were probably a mile or 2 from me. And
did they see anything or experience anything?
No.
Did they a mile or 2? Did they hear the scream, the roar?
I never asked them that question, but I asked them when I came back to, after I come back to my grandfather's house that day, and I told my grandfather what had happened. He could tell I was really upset because he'd never seen me like that, and he could tell that I was pretty torn up, and I couldn't catch my breath. I'd run so hard all the way back, And and when I sat with him for a good while, and he was telling me it was be okay. These things won't hurt you. They've been around here forever. And I said, well, why you never told me about them? Because I didn't want you to be scared of them. So, you know, I waited for a while. Then my friends came in. They came in down at the camper, which it's maybe 60 yards from the house where the barn is, and the camper's there. I heard them come in because we all had ATVs, four wheelers. And they had drove their four-wheeler because they went down old roads, old logging roads is where they went and parked, and then went off to their stand. Where I was at, there was no way to get a ATV back there with all those fences, so I just walked it. And I heard them come in, and I went down, and they all looked at me and said, what's wrong? You okay? And I said, well, yeah, I'm fine. Did you guys do any good? And Scott, he'd already had a deer hung in the tree. When I got down to the barn, they'd already strung it up and they were skinning it. And I said, you guys ever seen anything in the woods up here? And they said, what are you talking about? And I told them, and they said, a Bigfoot? No, we never seen anything like that. You've been drinking too much, Big D. And I said, I haven't drank anything. But, you know, I just kind of let it go at that. I didn't mention anything else about it. But if they would have heard something or seen something, they would have, I feel like, told me. And, no, I don't think they ever seen anything up there.
So them lads that were in with you in 1990s then, Darrell?
That was November the 6th of 1992.
1992.
1992.
What do they think now? Because, or have you must have spoken to them about it between then and now, have you?
You know, really, we hunted together for a lot of years. It was Scott, Cody, and Jason, my three friends that were good friends with me that time. One of them was my brother-in-law, Jason was. And, you know, I mentioned it to him several times after that, and he didn't say much about it. I didn't mention about seeing anything up there. I just asked him if he believed in them, and he said he didn't know where he did or not. You know, he didn't think much about it. And I really haven't seen Scott and Cody in, you know, quite a few years, probably. I mean, we kind of went our ways. You know, I did different things. I got into politics. I was working. I had 2 or 3 businesses, and you know, I was pretty busy, and I didn't hunt as much as I did because I kind of lost the feeling for hunting after that. And what hunting I did do was out of my truck in the fields. I just parked up in my truck. I didn't go in the woods, and I didn't do a lot of hunting anyway. But
so without pushing it too far, then what were your reason for not mentioning it? Was it just the embarrassment of being laughed
no
at?
doubt about it. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. You know, I was an elected official. You know, I told very few people. I did mention it to my wife at that time, and she thought, well, you sure you seen something like that, or you think it might have been a bear or something? I said, no, I know what I've seen. And she didn't give me any hard time about it. And
no,
you know, there's a couple other people. Martin Groves was my best friend, still is, and you know, he was a county officer in the same county that I was a mayor in, and Martin had not had his encounter at that time, and there was a couple other people that I trusted real well that weren't going to say anything or make an issue out of it, and I mentioned it to them, and nobody really thought much about it. But it was in the time where there weren't any podcasts. There weren't any radio shows. There weren't any groups. You know, there wasn't anybody that you talked about this type of thing with. Back in the early 90s, I mean, I barely had a cell phone. It was one of those big old huge cell phones that didn't pick up very well. And, you know, we didn't go onto the internet or anything like that. And, you know, I was never one of those real tech guys anyway, and I still am not. But you know, there was really nowhere to look this type of stuff up. I'd heard about of course, the Fountain Monster and, you know, Boggy Creek. I'd heard about some of those, and I was very aware of, you know, the Patterson gambling. I knew about that, and I did believe that those things might exist out in the west coast of the United States and maybe British Columbia, but I had no idea that they would be in Tennessee. So, it kind of caught me off guard. You know, it took me, I don't think I would have ever got over that happening to me if I hadn't had the counter on the river, which really changed my whole opinion about these creatures, and I realized that there's a lot of different creatures. All these creatures aren't the same. Now, I've never seen another creature like the one I've seen.
That's what I wanted to get at, and I don't know whether Chris thought that. You said this were different to anything you've ever seen before. Do you think that these things, it's a subspecies, or do you think it's an entirely different type of thing?
No, I think there's, I'm no expert at anything. I don't claim to be. I'm only talking about what I've experienced and what I believe, and from my own encounters and experiences. So, the ones that I met by accident 7 years later, it was in 99, early 99, I was fishing on the Cumberland River, which is between Nashville, Tennessee and Cheatham County, Tennessee. It's a long stretch of real rural backcountry riverbank area. I mean, it's just rural and not a whole lot of stuff out there. And I'd been fishing in this same area before, but it'd been quite a few years since I've been to that spot. But it was a real good place to fish, and I remember it very well. And nobody knew how to get to it. Nobody could go to it because you had to have permission to go back on this piece of property. It was some type of water treatment sewer facility or something like that there. I believe that's what it was on the river bank that filtered waters and stuff through that. There's a big plant, and my friend's uncle or cousin worked there, and this would have been like 20 years I've been fishing there, but it's been quite a while since I've been there. And he would let us pull in behind that place. There was a barbed wire fence, a parking area behind the facility, and you parked there and you went through a gate and you locked the gate back, and we'd walk back about 200 yards on this trail back into the deep woods right on the river. And there was one real good spot. There was a clearing back there. It's where another stream run out into the river, and it was like a large creek that run out into the river, and there was a sandbar that went all the way out on the side of that creek when the water was regular level that you could walk out on and fish. And, the water's 30, 40 foot deep out there in the middle, but with that sandbar, you could walk out and reel your fish in without getting tangled up there on the bank where all the roots and stuff were sticking out of the bank. And that's the area that I went to fish in the spring. I hadn't been there in probably 4 or 5 years since I've been there, and I was by myself, and my friends didn't fish as much as I did anymore. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know where one of them was. I knew one of them I was pretty familiar with, but anyway, I still had permission to fish back there, and I asked when I came in. They knew who I was. They remembered me. I was in a different vehicle, but they remembered who I was, and the same guy that was at the guard shack there. And I just walked back through the woods with my fishing gear, and I carried a 5-gallon bucket with me with my tackle box and everything in it, and I carried a styrofoam minnow bucket and fishing poles. And I'd go back and set up there and turn the bucket upside down. I'd sit on it like a seat against a tree, and it was pretty. It was just a great place to fish, and that's where my life changed again. So the first occurrence I had was really just scared me to death. It really did, and I still have a hard time today believing how fearful I was of that situation. But I was, and I've been fishing back there a lot of times, but I hadn't been back there in quite a few years, and it was a little more growed up than I remembered it. But it was a game trail that ran all the way through there, and then it was an opening, like I was saying. And I've been fishing there that morning just a little bit, and I was catching quite a few fish. And I'd go down in front, get off my seat, run down to the very end of the sandbar, walk down it, and reel my fish in and put it on the stringer, and go back up and sit down and grab a minnow bucket and put a minnow on and start again. And I had two or three lines out, and by myself, and it was just a cool morning in the 40s, if I remember right, sunny but cold with a little wind blowing. It was in January or February, I believe, of '99. It was in early winter, late winter of that year, or close to it. And you know, it was a perfect day to fish, and I hadn't been fishing in quite a while, and I was doing pretty well. I came back to sit down to put them in on my line, and my minnow bucket was gone. And I thought, well, how could that happen? I'm looking around everywhere, and to the left of me was a huge, real thick patch of what we call kudzu here, which look like vines. They're real thick vines, and they're real, I mean, you can't see through them. They're really thick, and they're hard to get through. And there's a game trail that goes through them, but the vines are hanging over the trail. You have to get down almost on your knees to get through that part. I'd never been back in there. As far as I went is where I was at.
Yeah.
And, you know, I couldn't figure out what happened to my minnow bucket. I got up and looked around and went down the bank there a ways, thinking maybe it fell in the river somehow. The wind was blowing a little bit, but not enough to blow my bucket away. Plus, especially it had water in it too, and it was pretty heavy when you have 4 or 5 dozen minnows and the full amount of water in it, like I had.
Yeah.
I'd only used a couple of minnows, and it was gone. I couldn't find it anywhere. So basically, I got all my stuff packed up and left because I had nothing to fish with. I didn't bring any type of artificial lure to fish with. And it was a time of year when we did what we call crappie in our area. And went on back to my truck and got in it and left. And next weekend, I came back. And I brought another minnow bucket. And same process, went back. This weekend was a little different, though. It had been raining. The water was up. It was up higher than it was the week before. I could not see the sandbar. The water was kind of muddy, and it was moving kind of fast. And it was just had been raining that morning. It looked a little bit cloudy, like it could storm again. And, you know, the water was a little swifter than I would have liked it. But I was there, so I thought I'd give it a chance. And I put my lines out again. They swiftly went down the river so fast that I just reeled them in closer and where I could watch them because the water of the current was like quite a bit stronger. And I got a little bite, and I went down there to reel in the fish, and I couldn't go down the sandbar. I had to kind of hang off the bank where these roots and stuff were sticking out and reel the fish up, and came out and took it off and put it on the stringer and turned around and walked probably, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 feet back up to where the bucket was I was sitting on, and reached over to get a minnow, and my minnow bucket was gone again. And I'm like, you know, what is going on here? You know, I mean, it's, I'm starting to think, well, somebody's in here and they're playing a joke on me.
It's playful, isn't it? It almost sounds playful what's happening, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, first of all, where I'm at, nobody, if anybody, there's nobody that knew how to get to where I'm at. If there were, they worked at that plant, and there was only 4 or 5 employees that worked there, and I'm not aware of any of them fishing. And my friends, Dwayne and Donnie, one of them, I don't know where he was even living anymore, but and the last time I heard of Dwayne, he hadn't been down there in years and years, and it was his uncle or cousin one that still worked there. I know by the truck he drove. And anyway, I was kind of baffled. I thought, well, where'd the minnow bucket go? I'm thinking, well, the wind's blowing pretty hard today. Maybe it did blow in the string. But first of all, a styrofoam minnow bucket doesn't sink. It floats. And it's a big old white bucket. You would see it. I looked around again, looked all around, and was a little aggravated. And I even made, I remember going, I don't know, somebody's in here, and I don't know who you are, but I wish you'd bring my minnow bucket back. And of course, I didn't hear anything or see anything, and just, you know, packed up again and went on back to the house, and was kind of a little bit disturbed about it the whole week, thinking, you know, somebody's down there. Maybe it's somebody living down there on the river or something. But this is so remote, though, I can't picture anybody living down there because, I mean, there's nowhere for them to go. And I guess you could live off the land that way. The pioneers did, but it'd be very difficult. But so I guess it wasn't the next week. It was probably a couple weeks later. I think I was working some of that time frame and couldn't get down there the next weekend, if I remember correctly. And I went on down, and anyway, a couple weeks later, it was on a Sunday. I normally go to church on Sunday, but I didn't go that Sunday, and I went on down to fish, and same thing, but this time I brought another styrofoam minnow bucket. It has a little metal wire handle on it, but I've tied a real good-sized string or rope, not a big rope, but a little string onto it, and it was probably 20 or 30 foot long, and I tied it real tight on the metal handle. And when I went down, I set up and set all my stuff up and my rods and baited them up and threw them out and had them in the water ready to fish. And I took that rope and tied it around the tree, and it was tied to the handle of the minnow bucket. And I brought my 410 shotgun. Of all the big weapons to bring, I brought a little shotgun. It was.
I was going to ask you if you were armed when you went in, but
yeah, I did. I was getting a little nervous, and I thought, well, I mean, if somebody steals your minnow bucket, they may be willing to do something a little worse. And so I had that leaning against the tree, and it's just old single shot 410, but it was good enough to scare somebody anyway. So, you know, here I am. I'm down there fishing, and it's another normal day like the first one. The water's back down. The sandbar I can walk out on. It's just a beautiful morning. And fishing, and caught several fish, and come back up and sat down and reached over to grab my minnow bucket, and my minnow bucket's gone. But the string is tied to the tree, and I look up, and the string is going all the way down under this kudzu on that game trail, and it's stretched real tight. So I knew that I was going to be able to find my minnow bucket because it was tied, and it would be very difficult for something to untie it as fast as it would take with all the knots I'd put in that line. And so I got down on my knees, and I crawled up and looked up in there, and I could see my minnow bucket. It was sitting in the middle of the little game trail there. And it's super muddy right through that little trail where deer have walked on it, you know, everything else. It's just muddy because it's a real wet time of year anyway. It's raining on and off, and it's spring. And I go in there, I crawl in there on my knees and grab my minnow bucket and start to pull it back. And I look to the left back in there, and it's real thick. And I see another minnow bucket laying in the kudzu. And I'm thinking, well, there's my other minnow bucket. And then I look a little further over to the right side, and there's a minnow bucket laying over there on it, turned upside down. And I'm thinking, well, there's my two minnow buckets that disappeared. And here's the other one. Well, this one that was still attached to the tree, the top was off, and the water had sloshed out on the trail. And I remember looking in the bucket, there was one minnow. And I had like 4 or 5 dozen minnows in there, and I'd probably use 3 or 4, but not nowhere near that many. I'm thinking, well, something's already got my minnows. And, you know, I'm looking in there, and I looked down to grab, I went on by that, kind of crawled back through there and grabbed those other 2 buckets and came out and threw them over next to the tree, and then went back to get my bucket and pull it. And right as I started to pick the bucket up and bring it out, right where the lid was, it was all wet where the water had sloshed out, and there was a big, well, it wasn't big, but it was a good-sized footprint. And I'm thinking, you know, it wasn't like nothing huge. It wasn't a 12-inch track. It was probably 9 or 10 inches, maybe, like a kid. And I'm thinking, well, who in the world would be down here? It just snowed a couple of weeks ago, and it's 30-something degrees. Who's running up and down the riverbank barefooted? And that was the thought in my mind. You know, why would anybody be out here running around barefooted this time of year? You just don't see that in my area in the winter. So it kind of baffled me a little bit. So I pulled my bucket back and set it next to the tree and looked again. I only had one minnow. I couldn't believe I had one minnow. And I'm sitting there, so I'm thinking, I've got my shotgun on the other side of me. I'm thinking, well, somebody is in here. Now I know it's a person. It's a juvenile, probably. They're in here camping out or something and stealing my stuff. And so I'll leave my poles out and act like I'm fishing. My shotgun's to the right side of me on the tree. I slowly reach to get it and lay it on the ground next to my leg. and it's loaded with one shell in it. And the minnow bucket's sitting next to me, and I'm looking straight ahead, but I'm kind of looking out of the left side of my eye with my peripheral vision, trying to look and see what's over here, because I'm not leaving till I find out who's stealing my minnow bucket. So I'm sitting there a good hour and a half goes by. It was probably closer to 2 hours, and something catches my eye to the left, and I look real quick, and there's this creature, and it's holding on to a little tree that's in the kudzu, because I could see the top of the branch move when it was holding it, and it would lean out and look at me. Just lean out and look at me, and it'd go back. As soon as I'd look, it'd go back in. And it startled me so bad. I remember that feeling. Oh, my God, I'm running into these things again. That was the first thing that crossed my mind. I do not want to be around these creatures. I wasn't looking for them. I wasn't trying to have an encounter. I'm getting out of here. So I got all my stuff with my shotgun, and I'm walking out backwards, thinking one of these things is going to attack me. And it was just sitting there looking at me. It wasn't trying to chase me. It wasn't making any noises. It would just lean out and look at me. And it wasn't a huge one. It was maybe 5.5, 6 foot. Maybe it wasn't 6 foot tall, but it was a young one. And but I was still frightened. I didn't know what this thing. What I did know was if it was a little one, there was probably a big one pretty close. So.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel very comfortable, so I left. I walked out of there, and I walked out. I turned around and looked ever so steps I took with my gun to make sure one of the bigger ones wasn't coming after me. And I got on back to my truck, loaded up real quick, and got out of there. Well, it kind of ate at me all week. All week I was thinking about it. That night I was thinking about it. All week at work I was thinking about it. I got to go back. I've got to go back. I just kept telling myself, I've got to go back. Why I wanted to go back, I don't know, but I just kept telling myself that I needed to go back. And so
Darrell, did you not consider taking someone with you?
No, I didn't at that particular time. I did take somebody with me later on, but I didn't at that particular time. Because 2 reasons. I didn't want anybody to think I was crazy. Hey, I'm down at the river fishing. I got some kind of creature that's looking at me. I didn't want to get into that and start any of that type stuff, because I knew how much criticism. I knew other people that had seen these creatures and they had told people, and I remember the ridicule they went through.
Right, I see.
And I just thought that. First of all, I didn't think I'd go back, but I made my mind up I was going to. So I did go back the next Sunday and went in, sat down, set everything up like I was fishing, set my minnow bucket there, but I never planned on fishing. I didn't even have a minnow on the hook. I was just sitting there waiting for this creature to come back out, and it was a long time. It seemed like it was 3 or 4 hours. I was just about at the point thinking, well, it's not coming back out. It must have just been traveling through here, and it's off somewhere else. And then about that time, I heard movement in all that kudzu. I could hear something moving around in there. It sounded large. And I looked up real slow, and I real slowly looked to my left, and there it was, hanging on the little tree, looking at me again. Except this time, there was another one. It was about the same size as that one, and it was behind that one, and they would both look out and look at me. And I sat there I had my gun.
Oh, did you take the same gun? Or a bit?
Same gun. Yeah, same gun. And it was leaning against the tree. It wasn't on the ground. And I'm thinking, well, I never wanted to use it, but just in case they charged me or something. And I didn't. I don't know that a 410 would have killed the thing. It may not have, but I still felt like I could probably scare it off with the noise more than and I wouldn't have shot it. I'd probably just shot in the air or shot close to it and frightened it. But anyway, these two, I would look at them and it would look at me. And then it got to the point where they weren't even trying to hide anymore. I was just looking right at them. They were looking right at me, and they would just lean out, and there was one right behind the other one. They were both about the same size. And I felt pretty comfortable with them. I really wasn't frightened of them. I started making a few phrases. I don't remember exactly what I said, but hey, do you live here? Or just regular words and conversation, and so often, not constant on a regular, like sentences after sentences, but just, I didn't want to frighten them or them to be frightened and send the big one in on me. And I started going down there. I started thinking, well, maybe they're not that bad. And I started taking them gifts. I was going every day or every other day. It was about 30 minutes from my work. And I was on a schedule where I could work however I wanted to. I worked at a job that was basically, I actually owned that business at that time, but I also worked at another job I was basically on a commission type thing. So I worked my own hours, and I started going down there. I started taking them. First thing I took them was some fruit, and I found out real quick they didn't like some of it. And I found out their favorite fruit was definitely cantaloupe. They love cantaloupe. These did anyway. That was their favorite. And they didn't want it cut up. They want a whole cantaloupe laid there for them. And they don't eat it dirty. They want it on a plate. So I went along with that for quite a while and started taking some different things. And I went through a lot of different type foods. And I didn't take them food every day or every other day. I take it 2 or 3 times a week because I didn't want to get them contingent on me feeding them where they wouldn't feed themselves, and because I didn't want any trouble. But that went on for a long time until the third one came out, and he was a big one. He was a big male. The one I'd first seen for so long, she was a female. And she was about 5.5 foot tall, maybe a little taller than that when I first seen her. And the one behind her was a male, about the same height. And the bigger one was a male. And he was probably close to 7 foot. And he would be crouched all the way down, but he could stand up. And I couldn't see the middle part of his body because of the kazoo, but I could see his head and shoulders above it. And they were very friendly with me, and I asked them all kinds of questions, and every time I went in, I told them my name, what is your name, and this went on for all the way up till almost 4 years I did this, and I became very close friends with those creatures, and I found out real quick that they're the ones that make the big X's. They take big trees and they form big X's in the woods. And it also put the X's right next to the gifting box. I made them a little wood box. I put it in the fork of that tree I was sitting below, and I nailed it up there, and I'd put their gifts in that box. And they would bring me gifts. They brought me a half-gallon cardboard milk carton. Excuse me, I'm sorry, that I still have. I still have somewhere. And
get a drink if you want, Darrell. We've got plenty of time.
Good. Yeah, okay. And I brought them. I just kept bringing them things. I found out they're kind of like us. Their favorite thing was cantaloupe, cooked bacon. They love cooked bacon, and they want it on a plate though. They don't want it just thrown on the ground like you're feeding some type of animal. And if I throw it on the ground, they wouldn't eat it. If I put it on a little paper plate and push it over, they would eat it.
How close did you get to them, Darrell?
Well, the closest I got over the entire period was the female touched my shoe. She touched the very end of my shoe, and I touched the very end of her finger. Wow. I stuck my finger all the way out, and she stuck hers all the way out and touched me. But normally I was about, probably about 25 feet from them. But normally they would sit right in the bush line there and look at me. And there was other ones in there. I could hear them, bigger ones. I'd hear them moving around in there, but I couldn't see them. I could see parts of them, but not all of them. And the weird thing about it was I kind of learned to, they begin to trust me, and I begin to trust them. And anytime I would come in and get out of my truck and walk back through, I would start saying, hey, I'm here to visit you. Hope y'all are doing good today. And I would hear them all in there making all kinds of noises. They get excited. Do you think if you'd have been vocal with people in town and other places, they'd have been hunted, or
that have had to move on because other people would have gone into area? Is that one of the reasons that you were quiet about it?
Well, to be honest with you, the biggest reason I was quiet about it because I was afraid somebody would hurt them.
Yeah, that's basically where I'm at with it. Yeah.
And then again, you know, I had very few friends that I could converse about that with. Martin Groves being one of them, and you know, I had a real close friend named Darrell Denton, one of my best friends growing up, great friends, and I took him out there with me. He kept saying, "Let me go with you. Let me go with you." And these creatures are kind of funny because they don't really like people they don't know coming in there. And I found out that when I took him out there. I didn't know that till that day, but I said, "All right, you can go, but be real quiet. Come in real quiet and just sit down behind me and don't make a lot of noise and start talking. Just sit quietly and watch them." Well, he'd heard me talk about them for a couple of years, and he believed me, but it was just, I don't think it really sunk into his mind that these things were really there. And when I took him in there, Gary sat down right behind me, and I sat down, same old place I always sit, on my little orange bucket there next to the tree, 5-gallon bucket turned upside down. And he sat there next to me, and we sat there a little bit before they came out because I'm sure they were a little curious why somebody else was there besides just me. And I could hear them moving around, and they really didn't answer me when I walked in like they normally do because these creatures are so intelligent and they're so smart. They are definitely watching you when you get out of your vehicle. I mean, there's one of them somewhere that knows what's going on. I learned so much from the ones on the river, as I call them. But Gary's sitting there, and then he sees the female comes out. He looks at me and taps me on the shoulder, and I look at him, and he is absolutely terrified. I said, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Man, you didn't tell me that these are real." I said, "What do you think I was telling you?" And he got up seriously and ran as fast as he could, all the way back down the trail, all the way to my truck, and got in it and locked the doors. And I'm talking about a guy that doesn't get scared very easy. I mean, he was a really good ball player and great athlete and great friend of mine. We played ball together for years, but scared him to death. And I sat there another hour or so and just trying to communicate with them like I normally did. They would bring me and make me things. Like I said, they made me a 5-gallon cardboard. Well, they found a 5-gallon cardboard milk carton, apparently in the river. It was, one time it was red and white, but it had faded out. It was kind of a pink and white. And they had put sticks through all 4 sides of it. And they'd come out making an X on all 4 of the sides. And they had a little bit of vine wrapped around them. It was a really cool thing that they made me because that was their symbol, the X. That was their family's symbol that I learned over time being with them. They would lay that X right where I would sit. And there'd be all kinds of stuff they would bring me. Rocks and even fish. They would catch fish and put them in the box. And they were just... They were great. But anyway, Darry never went back, and he never told anybody. He thought I was crazy for fooling with him.
And that location then, Darrell, is it the same today as it was back then?
Well, I haven't been there. I couldn't tell you if it's the same, but I haven't been there since probably about 2007. Because after I quit going there in 2004, I quit going there because they vanished. I went there for a long time. I became very good friends with those creatures anyway. And I even slept back there in my sleeping bag next to the tree, and I could hear them. I gave them whistles, hung them on tree limbs, little plastic whistles with little lines on them. And I didn't know what they would do. I gave them that as a gift. And then when I'd come in, every time to see them, they'd start blowing those whistles as loud as they could. You'd hear them blowing to the right, to the left, way back in the woods. And there was probably 9 or 10 in a little pack, plastic whistles. And when I'd leave, I'd say, "I'll see you later, bye." And I'd hear a bunch of them go, "Bye, bye, bye." I mean, it'd be different voices, but they'd all be saying bye, like they were just mocking me by saying that word.
So do you think that's mimicry then, or do you think they've actually they could actually vocalize?
Oh, I know they can vocalize. I 100% know they can speak English. They have their own language, and they know the American native language that I knew from. I had relatives that I grew up with that were Lakota Sioux Indian, American Indian, and I learned to speak a lot of that language when I was younger, and they understood part of that language. Now, they didn't answer back like you and I would, but they would nod, or they would make a sound, or I've got them to speak some words over the years, but they were very difficult to get to communicate like that. I don't know how many times I asked them where they were from. Where are you from? How did you get here? And they just look at me. And I asked them, one day I hit the right question. I said, how did you get here? Are you from the heavens? And they looked at me like they were puzzled. And I said, are you from another galaxy? And two of them went,
Really?
Really? Wow.
And I said, you mean you're from another world, another galaxy?
Really? Wow.
So that's why I've told people the last 20-something years that I think that's the first thing I think of when, Dr. Melba Ketchum is a very good friend of mine. Think the world of her. She's in my group. She's took so much criticism and ridicule by the scientific community. It's almost just sad. But, her and her team, it was called the Genome Project back in the mid-2000s. And she had over 101 literal perfect DNA samples, including hair, including saliva, including blood that they got from a nail board from one of the Bigfoot creatures they were studying out of the state of Kentucky. And she proved with numerous DNA studies and samples came back that it was 58% human female, 42% unknown creature. So whatever that 42% was had never entered the DNA databases to prove what kind of creature it was, not what we have anyway. But so I'm almost a 99.9% believer that these particular creatures came from another galaxy and probably mated with human females here at one time. I don't know when. Of course, the American Indians, which are our Native American people here in the United States, there's plenty of encounters and testimonies from the Indians, even back in as far back as I can remember, of these creatures coming into the villages at night and stealing women and children. And I'm sure that some of those probably did have relations with, with the women. And maybe that is a descendant from those. I don't know. I don't have all the answers for that, but that's my belief.
It's fascinating, Chris, isn't it? Don't you think?
Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't know that. I was about to ask you, Darrell, did they ever display anything paranormal abilities, anything unusual? Did you ever encounter that?
No, I wish I could say I did, because I do believe 100% that they can cloak or go interdimensional. I believe they can do that. Now, I don't know if certain ones can do that, or higher people in the group can do that, or I don't know, maybe all of them can do that. I don't know, but I do believe they can do it. I have witnessed one go behind a tree, a large male, and it never came out. And there was nowhere for it to come out at, and it just vanished. I did not see it go interdimensional or see it just cloak, as people call it. But Ron Moorhead, being one of my closest friends, and if Ron Moorhead told me there was a dinosaur flying around New York City, I would believe him. And he told me 100% that, his book that he put out, and if anybody is serious about learning about this, the higher vibration and energy these creatures have is much higher than our vibration, which we believe that possibly it turns into maybe another dimension, maybe the fourth dimension that we don't know that exists, but there's a good possibility. The third dimension, we know that dogs and cats can see into that, which the scientists tell us anyway. But, I don't know, but I know that I believe that they have special abilities, because there's no doubt about these creatures that I was with all those years on the river. They knew my intentions.
Yeah. It's
And,
almost reading your mind, do you think? Predicting what you were going to do before you did it?
you know, lots of times I was about to do something and they already knew what I was about to do. And what I'm saying by that is, like, for example, their favorite dessert was jelly-filled donuts. When I brought jelly-filled donuts, they got so excited. And I would open the box and I would put it on a little plate and I'd push it out about 4 or 5 foot in front of me, and then they would run out and get it and go back to their spot and eat it. And, you know, they would get so excited, but they knew what I had before I got there because they got super excited and they knew my intentions of what I was thinking about different things I would do. Like I would a lot of times write in the dirt right there. I would like make a mark and I'd say, can you tell me what that means? I was talking about the X because plenty of times I was trying to get some kind of understanding. I understood the X was their group's symbol, but what did it mean? And there were so many questions I would have liked to have answered that I never got the answer to. But
yeah. And Ron's book, for people that are interested, is that the Quantum Bigfoot?
I'm sorry I didn't finish that, Paul. You're exactly right. If anybody wants to read up on this, get Ron Moorhead's Quantum Bigfoot. I've read it 4 times. Every time I've read it, I've learned something else. It's one of those kind of things that just soaks into your mind and you learn more and more each time you read it. It's a fascinating book and it makes nothing but sense. You know, Albert Einstein said that the more energy available, the faster the transition. So, and you can figure that these creatures are way, you know, people think they're apes, and I almost start laughing when I hear that. There's a great American, a really great, well-known scientist here in the U.S. and speaks at a lot of Bigfoot conferences, and I just happened to be with him at be there when he spoke. I was with Ron Moorhead at the Florida conference 3 years ago, and he calls these things apes. And I can assure you, the creatures that I've been around are no ape. An ape doesn't know what Jesus Christ is. You ask them what Jesus Christ is, and you can see their face. I can't explain it. They know exactly what it is. And they also know intentions. They know how to do things. They know how to craft things. They can make baskets. They can, I don't know what all they can do. They made me so many little gifts. And it takes intelligence to do that. First intelligence thing they did when I gave them the whistles, I had no idea that the whole clan would be blowing them. But, you know, it takes a little bit of intelligence to know how to blow a whistle. I didn't show them how to do it.
Yeah.
So they definitely know when you go in. They don't like you to wear certain clothes. I learned that. I always try to change into the same clothes every time when I got there because they like you to wear the same thing. They don't like bright colors at all. They don't like reds. They don't like oranges. They don't like plaids. You know, I was really close to these creatures. They were like really, truly friends to me. And I trusted them, and they really changed my whole perspective about these creatures. I think there's a lot of different types of these creatures. I don't know how many different types. I believe I've seen 3 to 4 different types.
Is there a part of you then, Darrell, that wants to go back?
Oh, if I could find another family like that, which was very rare, I would go back tomorrow morning. But, you know, that's what people don't understand. You know, you hear people all the time that I literally get minimum 100 messages a month. What do I need to do to start Bigfooting? Or how do I go find them? Or what equipment do I need? Or where do I go? Or what do I look for? Well, you know, I tell people all the time, there's a lot of things I would tell somebody if they're really serious about getting into this type thing. But first of all, you don't ever find Bigfoot. Never.
Finds you.
They find you. They truly do. They find you. And, you know, if they don't want you to find them, you're not going to find them. If you go running in the woods with a weapon or a camera or even a trail camera, they don't like those things. And, you know, I didn't experience this myself, but I've got some very close friends that I've mentioned all the time that have had one of these creatures let them know that if you take a picture of them, steals their soul. So I don't know. None of them ever told me that, but I can see why that makes sense, because they don't like their picture taken, and quite frankly, they want to stay elusive. They don't want anybody to find them, because, look at all these crazy humans running out in the woods, shooting them and firing at them. When they see ones, they're so scared. The first thing on their mind, if they're hunting, is to fire at them.
Yeah.
And I can assure you, you go in the woods and fire on one of these things, you ain't getting out, because if there's one, there's four. And if there's two, there's eight. So, I mean, there's not like they're out there by themselves. And they've always got a juvenile crawling around the ground somewhere, peeping over a log, keeping the other ones, intact of where you are. And they love to use other animals. They love crows. The crows work with them. I have no doubt about it. There's been around too many of them. When you go into that area, a flock of crows will just go crazy, letting them know that somebody's coming into their area. They do the same thing with coyotes. I truly believe they use the coyotes to hunt for them. Actually, Billy Howell, one of my friends in Tennessee, we were not too far from where I had the encounter on the river. This was in 2020. We actually witnessed at 12, I believe it was 12:28 at night. We were sitting on a hilltop in a place where we were gifting a family of Bigfoot, but they weren't the ones that make the X's. These were more like the Sasquatch type, not quite as friendly. But we witnessed in a long open field, probably 250 yards from us, with a FLIR. Billy witnessed a pack of coyotes chasing a young deer, and it chased it all the way, a long ways, till it caught it in this open field and brought it down and had the deer down. And all of a sudden, the coyotes got up and ran off in different directions, and a Bigfoot runs out of the woods, grabs the deer, and runs back in the woods.
Right. Fascinating. It really is. And I'm obviously, I'm not going to pressure anybody for questions, but I don't know if we've had any in
yeah,
chat.
we've got. I was just about to say, I just wanted to ask Darrell, just because if it was me, Darrell, I would have been absolutely gutted if my friends, if I'd gone back there and they'd disappeared. Were you sad when that happened?
I got to tell you, I was probably I felt like I'd lost my best friend for a couple of weeks there, because it was heartbreaking. When I went back in there, what had happened is I was always there, either every day or every other day. And they knew that. I would tell them, I'll be back in a couple of days. If I get caught up at work, I'll be back. They didn't answer me, but I always talked to them constantly. And they seemed to know what I was talking about. And I got real busy at work, and it was probably like a week to 10 days. I'd never been away from them that long, and I was really worried about it. Every day I'd worry about it. I got to get down there real quick and spend a minute with them, but something came up. I just could not get down there. I don't remember exactly what all was happening, but it was a real busy time that just happened out of nowhere, and I just couldn't get free. I was working 90 hours a week probably, and I was really worried about them. I was trying to hurry up and get back down there, and then when I went back down there, this area where they had lived in, this kudzu, had all been bulldozed. That whole bank right there was bulldozed. There was a big pile of rubbish with trees and kudzu and smoking where they set it on fire. Somebody had. And that area was leveled off pretty well with backhoes and whatever you call all that equipment they cut the trees down with. And then there were stakes in the ground, like little wooden stakes with pink ribbons all around the ground, like they had staked it out to build something in there or something. And I got really frightened when I went in and seen that. So I went running all back through the woods yelling for them, way back in behind where the kudzu had been. And I was yelling really loud. And I went back in there, realistically, probably a couple miles. It was real thick and hard to get back there, and I was yelling at them and hollering, "Are you guys okay?" I never got any kind of sign that they were there. No evidence, no answer, no tracks, no footprints. They even got a boat. A couple of days later, went on the other side of the river to make sure they hadn't crossed the river, because somebody had come in and tore down their home, and nothing. And I went back there numerous times after that. I'd get up middle of the night, I'd wake up thinking about it. I get in my truck, go down there with my flashlight, and just take off walking back in there thinking maybe they'll come out and see me in the night. And never seen them again. You know, I don't know if someone killed them. I truly believe that they probably did. I think probably what happened, and this is just a theory, I've said this for the last 20 years or so. I think that it might have been partly my fault, because I think when somebody walked back in there thinking they were going to build something there, whatever they were building, whoever the contractor was or worked at that water plant or whatever the place really is, water, sewer, whatever it is, they probably were walking back through there, and these creatures might have thought it was me, heard me walking, if they didn't have a scout watching, and then they started blowing their whistles. And that's automatically going to give somebody some kind of, well, who's blowing whistles at us? You know, I've played this through my mind so many times. So I'm thinking that could have happened, or they could have just been back there clearing it off and maybe seen a couple of them. And then they call the authorities. They either call the game and fish or the police or maybe even some, you know, hunters, I don't know, to come in and get rid of them. So
chances are, though, I mean, you're expert here, Darrell, not me. You lived this experience, but chances are they wouldn't have hung around long enough to be targets. Do you think?
Well, I can tell you this much. I know of the ones that, you know, I've never had any friends like I had with those. They were truly my friends. They trusted me about as much as I could have trusted. I mean, I don't know how they could trust me anymore. They let me come in and see their family, and even the other family was in there, and they would yell at me and make noises. They didn't come out and show themselves. I'd see parts of them, but
yeah,
you know, for them to let me camp in there close to them over there, and they'd come out in the middle of the night and look over the kadzoo to look at me, but they never tried to harm me. They made me all kinds of what I call spiritual gifts that, you know, some stuff that I got, I don't know where they even got it at. It was crazy. But some really weird looking stones they brought me, and the stuff that I'd never seen before. And I just felt like they were close enough to me that they trusted me. And maybe I think they would have found me, is my point. If they were alive, if they were living, they would have found me.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, then, Chris, are we going to go to a few questions? Or does Darrell want to tell us about where they can find you? Because we'll be that engrossed in you talking, and we'll not know, really, Darrell, because show will be over.
So, oh, sure. Yeah. Thank you for, you know, my group is called Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures. That's very important. Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures. There's a lot of groups that I believe have tried to kind of piggyback off my group, because there's like 4 groups now that are called Bigfoot Believers. Then there's a Bigfoot Believers Creatures, a Bigfoot Believers and Others, but none of them are Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures. So my group is very famous for one thing: we don't allow ridicule, or we don't allow any criticism. You come on there and tell your story, and we don't have trolls. We've got almost 60,000 members, and we've ousted over 15,000 people. And if you come on and you're not open-minded, if you don't believe in their story, you just scroll on by and find something else. Because who are we to say that they're not telling the truth, or that picture is not real? Because we all see things differently. So
it's a great group. I'll vouch for that one. It's one of the few that I always jump in when I can and comment. It's a great group, and I recommend anybody find it on Facebook and join. And like Darrell says, as long as you're respectful, you'll be welcomed into it.
Sure, we'd be more than happy to have you in there. And I'd like to say something about my best friend, Martin Groves. I'm so honored. Martin is, I would say, the most well-known dogman attack person that's ever lived, and most everybody knows Martin Groves. And he's a superhuman being. He's just the best friend I could ever have, and for the last 44 years. And he dedicated this book to me. This is his newest book. It's called The Devil's Backbone. There's a whole page in here with just about me. And It tells a lot of nice things about me and also about our team. There's a page about Barton Nunley, and there's a page about Ron Moorhead. And those 4 people, including myself, that's our team that we research together. And appreciate if you buy his book. It's The Beast Between the Rivers. His first 2 books have been unbelievable sellers and sold out many times. And this one just came out. This is the editor's copy. I'm honored to have this. There's only 2 of these. He has one and I have one. So
yeah. Well, you don't be sure to tell him that he told me when the book were out he were going to come on either Truth Proof or Last Transmission. So we want him on.
Sure. He needs to get on. He really does, Paul.
Absolutely. So if you've done with that, we could perhaps jump to some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's get some questions.
One more thing, if I could. Ron Moorhead, my other best friend, he and I will be starting our own podcast in the middle of March. And it's called, it'll be called Too Real, TWO Real. For both of us, we consider everything we tell to be real. So us 2 will be called Too Real, and we'll be on twice a month. So we appreciate if everybody would subscribe to us and check out a little bit of our podcast there. Thank you very much.
We'll definitely give you our support.
We'll push it, Darrell. Definitely,
cool. Definitely, and give us a shout. I'd like to be on it.
Sure.
Okay, let's go for it then, Chris.
Okay. How do cryptids cause missing time if it is the cryptids? Have you ever heard anything like that, Darrell, about missing time in cryptids?
Sure. I know several people that it has happened to, including myself.
Wow. Okay.
In 2020, we were in Cheatham County, Tennessee. Darrell Yarbrough, gentleman I mentioned a few minutes ago, one of my close friends, with Billy Howell, one of my other research partners I've had for years and years. It's a certain spot we have in Cheatham County, Tennessee. And that night, one particular night, this is the same area we had seen the coyotes run down the deer, same area. We had a gifting spot there, and we had seen the female and the juvenile numerous times. Billy had seen the large male, over 12 foot tall. I had not seen him, but I'd heard him, and we were there, and 2 weeks in a row, these orbs attacked us, and that's why I quit going down there for a while, because it really kind of weirded me out. I didn't know what that was all about. We had these 2 huge red orbs, about the size of beach balls, come down in the woods and hover about a foot off the ground, and they were red, pink, and orange, pulsating inside. 2 big, huge orbs, just right off the ground, maybe a foot. We watched them for over an hour. And then all of a sudden, we were down there because the people that we knew, the lady who lived back there, her husband was a personal friend of ours, and they were terrified because these Bigfoot were coming looking in their window in the middle of the night and scared them to death. And that's what we were called down there to try to calm them down and get them to leave them alone. And anyway, we get a call from her. We're down in the woods watching these orbs. We're kind of scared and freaked out about these things. I'd never seen anything like that. And we get a call from her. Billy does. He's down the hillside from me, probably 30 yards to my left. And she goes, "These creatures, they're at the house." And about that time, our alarms went off at the trucks. We had my truck there, Billy's truck, and then we had David, who lived there, had pulled in behind us. He's an over-the-road truck driver. He had just came home and went in the house. All the alarms are going off on these trucks, and they're really loud. And we're like 200 yards from their driveway where they're going off at. And so we start to get up to run back, and all of a sudden I get hit with some kind of infrasound or zapped or whatever you call it. I've been zapped 3 times in my life, twice by Bigfoot, once by a dog man. And I could barely move. My legs felt like they were asleep. You know how your legs feel like when they go to sleep, and my legs were tingly. I had a real bad upset stomach, and I had a terrible headache, and I was really delusional and dizzy. And Billy was not as bad as me. He got up and took off running, but he was running slowly. He'd been hit, but not like I has. It must have been a lot closer to me, or it was just aiming at me. But all of our electronics stopped. That particular time, we feel, because my watch stopped at 12:48, my wristwatch. My cell phone quit. It took me a while to get my myself together to get up, but I did, and I went back to where this was happening, and our cars wouldn't start, our trucks wouldn't start, but the alarms were going off, and they're full blast, and we get in to try to start it because most time you can start your vehicle and cut it on and the alarm will stop, but that wouldn't work. Alarms went off for probably 30 to 45 minutes, so they just quit on their own. And I was so sick feeling, I got in and laid down in my truck and reclined the seat back and laid there for a while trying to feel better. And when I woke up, it was like 5 hours later, but it was, I don't know what happened to those 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
So I don't recall anything. I don't even recall going to sleep. I just remember getting in the truck. And I asked Billy, he said he didn't remember anything either. So I don't know what happened that night, but something happened. And I didn't realize my watch had quit till I looked at it that morning, and it was on, pretty sure it was either 12:28 or 12:48 that it quit.
Right.
And all I did was rewind it, and it started, and it's worked ever since. So I don't know how that happened, and my cell phone was dead, and I tried to push it to cut it back on, and it worked. So I do believe in that. Yes, I do believe that.
So do you attribute these orbs and the electrical activity somehow to Bigfoot stroke Sasquatch interference as well, or do you think they're separate things?
You know, I can't answer that question. I feel like it is probably, but I don't have any proof that it is.
No.
So all I can do is, that area is really, really covered up with Bigfoot, and these aren't regular Bigfoot. These are the type that I call the Sasquatch. They're a little more aggressive, not as friendly. They're not nothing like the ones out on the river, which I call the forest people.
Okay.
And they don't make X's. They just make tree breaks, twists, and bends. But the funny thing was, a week after that, we were back down there, and we were in a deer hunting blind because it was raining outside. It's just a little plastic tent, like a blind that's rounded. And we were setting in that in the woods because it was raining. We didn't want to get soaked. And we decided to set in that in the woods. It was an actual hunting blind that Billy had used when he deer hunted down there when they started having all these Bigfoot problems, the people who lived there. And we were in there a couple of hours, and then we had these white orbs come in. And they were 7 of them. There were 7 of them. And they were moving so fast between the branches and the trees and flying inside this tent and going around us and going back out. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. They were about the size of a softball, and they were moving really fast. You could see them coming from the woods, and they just whiz by us and go around and go back. And, you know, at that particular time, I'd never seen anything in those woods but Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And besides, you know, regular animals, coyotes, that type of thing. And that was the same area that the week before. It was the week that we seen the orb.
Right.
That we seen the glowing light bulb coming almost 200 yards away from a hillside. It looked like a light bulb coming on the ground. Looked just like a light bulb. It was just coming down across the ground, right off the top of the ground, maybe 3 or 4 inches from the ground. And I watched it come down, and it went through a ravine and disappeared. Then it came back up, and I seen it come out of the ravine. And it's walking right toward me. This is right before those orbs, the big orbs came down, the ones that I'm talking about the size of beach balls. It was that same night right before that happened. And that thing was walking right toward me, and I pulled out my 45. It's 2 foot from me. I didn't know what it was. Billy hits a huge spotlight he's got to the left of me and lights up the woods. And when he did, this thing turned into a opossum. This little light bulb.
Yeah, I know what that is. Yeah. Wow.
Turned into an opossum. It looked right at me, opened his mouth, and it hissed, and it turned around and walked back in a natural form, and then walked right back to where the orbs came from. And then the orbs came down maybe 30 minutes.
So what's happening there then? Are these things kind of shape-shifting then?
That's what I'm relating to, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's that's the first time anything like that had ever happened to me. But
Wow.
It weirded me out so bad that I didn't go down there for a while.
I bet you didn't know.
Oh dear. Wow.
So I do think they can, Beth Collinsworth that's in my group, she's very intuitive, one of the best in the world as far as knowing things. She actually saved us from getting eaten up by dogmen in LBL.
Yeah.
In 23. And me, Martin, and Barton. And my cell phone service doesn't even work in the LBL. I have no service at all. I can't call nobody, answer nobody. I can't text, can't message. We had dog men howling all around us. We could hear them running across the lake in the shallows, howling and everything else. Martin had already been zapped twice, and he was getting pretty nervous. And Barton and I were sitting next to the fire, and I said, "You ready? Because they're coming." We thought they were coming in right on top of us, and they were. We already had a Bigfoot on top of the hill to the left, watched us for over 2 hours. And Beth calls me on my phone and says, "Get out of there now." And I says, "How did you call me? My phone doesn't work here." She goes, "It doesn't matter. Get out of there now. Where are you?" And I said, "We're in the LBL." She goes, "You got dog men all around you, and you got a feral man to the left of you." I said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "I'm telling you, there's a feral man with you, with this group of dog men. Y'all need to get out of there now." And we got pretty weirded out. If it hadn't been for Martin jumping up and going and screaming in the woods at them, I think they probably would have come in and got us. But
yeah, I've got to ask a question, and I know we've got loads of questions here. And thanks, Lorraine, for fielding these. And I hope people aren't too disappointed if we don't get through them all. But you've not got a phone signal, Darrell. How she managed to call you, and how did she know, or how did the?
Paul, I can't answer that. It's what I'm saying. She's very intuitive. She has the ability to pick up certain things. And Beth and I are very close. She's one of the admins in my group, and she's a Tennessee girl too. And I don't know anybody like Beth. She just has a special gift.
Yep.
And I don't have no idea how my phone works because it never works. I get upset all the time when I'm there. The only phone we ever have that works is Barton's. Yeah. And mine never works, and neither does, of course, Martin doesn't use his cell phone anyway. So
no, well, I'm pretty useless when it comes to phones. So
yeah,
we're on the same page. So there's a question here. Then what we got, Chris?
Yeah. So Rich Allsop's asking, does Darrell go along with the theory that Bigfoot is linked with UFO sightings, or perhaps some, maybe?
I can't say that I'd go along with it. After the ones on the river told me that they were from another galaxy, I would have to think that that's a pretty good possibility. And, I don't know if they still are. Now, what I understood, that they come many years ago from another galaxy is what I understood. I've never seen a UFO in my life that I'm aware of. I've never seen an alien that I'm aware of. And I would say it's a possibility, so I can't say I don't agree with that.
Thank you.
Cool. Question: are cryptids teleported down by UFOs, as Stan Gordon states, or are they teleporting from underground using witchcraft? I know, look, Darrell, I know you don't have the answers to this. This is all just, we're shooting in the dark with this, as you know.
That's okay. That's all right. I wish I could answer that for you, but I don't know how to answer that. I apologize.
No, I think I'd be the same. We'd want to be speculating, won't we? Because we just don't know, do we?
Well, I don't know. If I don't know something, I just say I don't know it because I don't like to over speculate or add anything to anything. So that's just the way I am. So,
but this fellow might have a good question. We know.
Andy Rollins asking Darrell, do you think the Appalachians are more productive in sightings of these animals, or if they are animals, more so than the is that PNW?
PNW.
Is that the Pawnee or PNW?
Pacific Northwest.
Pacific Northwest. More so than
do I think the Appalachians are more productive in sightings? To be honest with you, I don't think there's a lot of difference because I used to think that the Pacific Northwest, and when you're talking about Pacific Northwest, you're talking about Oregon, California, Washington State, which probably has the most sightings of anywhere. And it's also on the border of the, British Columbia area where there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of miles of remote wilderness. Who knows what's living in that area? But I don't necessarily think that there's any. I used to think that you're correct on that. There was probably more out there than there was in the Appalachians. But I don't anymore because I've found out so much over the last 30-something years These creatures are everywhere. I mean, I heard a great scientist get up at that Florida conference and say there might be 4,000. Now, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be criticizing myself, but he made a statement there might be 4,000 of these Bigfoot creatures in the United States. And I literally, right in front of him, started laughing. I said, there might be 4,000 in the state of Tennessee, but these things are everywhere. And, you know, I do definitely believe there's a lot more now than there was when I first had my first encounter.
Yeah.
And I also do think that when you've got, you know, the encroachment of new homes, new businesses, and they're taking up a lot of the wilderness to add on these, you know, new properties and new things, that they're bringing out these creatures from an area they've lived in a long time too. People are seeing them because that was their home they've taken over. They're seeing a lot more of them because of that. And you've also got more people in the woods stomping around now wanting to be Bigfoot explorers and researchers. And there's a big difference, but you've also got to look at the issue of how many people are missing in the woods. Now, you want to see an astounding, I don't know if any of you followed David Pilatus, but David Pilatus, you're talking about an astounding number. Look up Yosemite National Park. It is mind-blowing.
The amount of
there's more people missing in Yosemite National Park. Now, this is a statement that I heard. I haven't looked it up myself. Than any other place in the world.
Really?
And you go into these national parks, you know, what's taking these people?
Yeah.
I mean, do I think it's a Bigfoot out there doing this? No, I don't. Do I think it's a dog man? You know, there may be some of those creatures involved in some of that, but there's too many people that go missing to just think it's a Bigfoot or there's something we don't know about.
But there's something, Darrell, that's a little bit different about these missing people, isn't there? I mean, that they're going missing, because if it were natural predation, a cat or a bear,
sure,
you'd see evidence of it, wouldn't you?
Right. You see a torn up shirt, you see blood. You know, it'd be a lot of evidence. These people go missing. They don't even find their guns. They're carrying a gun. They're a hunter. They don't find anything. No backpack, no cell phone. You know, I don't know what's happening to them, but only reason I brought that up because of that question. Because a lot of people relate these creatures to doing a lot of this. And I do know that there are Bigfoot out there that have you on the menu. Don't think they're not. That's the worst part about researching. When I very first started doing this, I don't know how many hundreds of times I went in the woods by myself and spent the night. And I'm not talking about down the road from the closest park. I'm talking about I'm in 6-7 miles in the middle of nowhere, and I wasn't as frightened as I was now. I know now what's in the woods. There's stuff in there that people have never heard of.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen them all, but I've heard people bring them up of what they are. But I don't believe all these creatures are friendly. I think they're just like we are. Human beings, some of them are good and have good hearts, good intentions. Some of them don't want to be bothered by anybody. Then you got the ones that'll kill you by looking at you. So, you know, there's good and bad in everything.
So 60,000 members in the Facebook group, yeah?
Almost, not quite.
Almost 60,000. Yeah. So are you getting, obviously you're going to get lots of private messages about people's sightings, and some of it'll be BS, but I bet you there's areas, isn't there, Darrell, that are coming up quite often by different people where they're talking about a specific location, and locations that you might not want to talk about on air because you want to keep these people's identities and that location secret. But are you finding strong areas, real strong possibilities where there could be good research areas that haven't even been talked about openly?
Yeah, there's a lot of areas like that. There's not one. There's a lot of them. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen it or not. It doesn't fail. I was sitting with my lady on the couch last night, and I had two people message me that were telling me about creatures they had around their house. And I just, quite frankly, I don't want to be rude. I just don't have time to answer all of them. Yeah. But I try to answer all of them. Sometimes it may be a week or so before I get to them, but I try to get to them. And I don't have the time or the means to get out to that area to research it myself. I used to have, back in the day, in the mid-2000s, I had early to mid 2000s, I had two teams of 3 people on each team, and we would do that. And then I had another team of 3 more people, and we were on the road constantly. I mean, it was just no way to keep up with them. There were so many people calling that had some type of creature at their home, and very seldom was it not true. I mean, occasionally we'd run into something that wasn't anything that they thought it was, but normally it was normally some type of Bigfoot creature on the ones we investigated. Some of them we never figured out what kind of creature it was, but yeah, I definitely think that people would be shocked if they knew how close these creatures are to towns.
Yeah,
they really would be shocked. They really would. Scott Carpenter was a very close friend of mine. The world lost what a great, fantastic researcher and human being when they lost Scott Carpenter. He was a really good friend to me. He helped me rebuke the ones who attacked my farm in 2020. And man, he did so much for the research on this particular issue. He was finding these creatures in parks, in city parks, in downtown Knoxville, Tennessee. I mean, we're talking about where hundreds of thousands of people live, real close to the downtown parks. You know, they come in through funnels in the night, and even in the daytime, they're hiding in the woods watching people.
Right. Okay.
So don't be fooled by thinking these things only live out in the middle of nowhere, because they love to come in the middle of the night and go behind a steakhouse at 2 o'clock in the morning and get a bag of scraps out.
Darrell, do you think it's a matter, with everything going on at the moment with the UFO and the unknown and the unexplained, do you think there's a possibility that this could come out about these creatures, about cryptids, that the possibility that these exist? Because at the moment, it's not even on the radar. It is obviously amongst us and our genre, but outside of this, there's a little bit of something. But do you think that might help the disclosure?
Well, I definitely think that, especially I'm basing it on the United States. They actually did come out a year or so ago that admit that UFOs are real and there is intelligence here visiting us. So, I mean, look how many years it took for that to go on. I mean, the last 30, 40 years of my life, I can remember people saying that really happened, and people who had encounters with these creatures and even abducted. And now the U.S. government has come out and said, yes, they're real. They are here and they exist. There's no doubt in my mind that our U.S. government here knows about these creatures. I truly believe that Franklin Roosevelt, the president back in the day, he's the one who started the national park system and put a lot of these major parks into effect. These huge national parks with 300,000 or 400,000 acres of nothing but wilderness. I believe he knew about these creatures, and I believe he was trying to put those things there where they wouldn't harm people, and they wouldn't be harmed by people, and they'd be left alone. First of all, the U.S. government, I don't know about the British government, but the U.S. government, the national park system is a $2.8 billion, that's with a B, billion-dollar industry a year. That's a lot of money, $2.8 billion industry. And they're not going to tell people, hey, don't go to the national parks. You might have a dog man running around back there that might harm one of you, or you might have a 10-foot hairy man that might harm you. We're not sure if he will or not. That's one of the biggest reasons the government doesn't mention cryptids, because they know they exist. There's no way they can't. There's too many stories of even military who've killed them on bases, and of landslides and wildfires where they've been picked up in the wilderness, harmed and injured, and medics picked them up and carried them off in a helicopter. So there's all kinds of these stories. I don't believe all of them are just made up. I believe some of it's actual fact. I guess there's a possibility that some people wouldn't believe in a Bigfoot if it was walked up to them and shook their hand. But, that's okay. There's people like that. But
yeah.
To think that they don't exist is a little shocking to me, because, it really does change your life when you have your experience. And the thing about it, what it does, it leads into more and more and more, and it never stops. So I tell people all the time, if you're going to start studying these things and trying to research them, it's not like you just go in today and quit tomorrow, because it doesn't quite work that way.
No, it's good advice. Do this question, Chris?
Yeah, well, Tanya's asking very similar. It's related to this. I mean, do you feel that you've, got a connection with these, with cryptids in general? Do you think that your encounters have led to that, or do you think because you're putting yourself out there so often, it just happens and you've got to be in the right place?
I have no doubt I have a connection.
Right.
It says,
100%.
Do you feel fear sometimes? Part of that question there. Do you get a good vibe off some of them always, or all of them, or are there other times when you realize, no, this isn't for me, or we've got to just be very wary with this?
Well, I tell you this much, Martin Groves and I, for years, we went into the LBL before we had our team. It'd be just me and Martin, and I've never seen anybody like Martin, and not because he's my best friend, but he has an ability. Where somehow, some way, he relates to this dogman creature, and this creature relates to him. And I have a super ability like he does when it comes to Bigfoot, because we will go into certain areas. We went into the area 2 years ago that nobody'd been to, where he was attacked in 1993 by 2 dogman creatures, maybe 3, and 2 large Bigfoot that tried to kill him and his partner while they were turkey hunting, camping. Nobody been into that area, and he and I went into that area in the middle of the night. And he for years and years, it was like he had PTSD over it. He did not want to go back to that area because he was afraid of what might happen. But we did, and we went back. And as we were going in, he looked at me and he said, "Do you feel them?" And I said, "Yeah, they're on the left side. They're on the hillside." About that time, I heard them whoop. And then I heard about 4 or 5 rocks and sticks went flying by our head. And we walk a little further back in there, and he goes, "Bubba, we got to turn around and go back. I feel them. They're on that hill up there." And we heard a howl or 2, but did not see the creatures. But it was dark, and we came out. But I've seen, the story I told a few minutes ago about Beth Collinsworth calling me in the morning on my cell phone that had no reception. That night, I really think we would have probably been hurt or maybe even killed if it hadn't been for Martin, because Martin had been sick. He'd been zapped twice. I had taken him in his Suburban down the road to the nearest restroom in the park because he was about to throw up. He was so sick in his stomach. And trying to get him calmed down and get him back together, where he was reclining back in his Suburban, backed up into the woods, and we're a good ways from it, but Martin Nunley and I have a fire going, and we started hearing these dogmen coming in. Like I was saying, you could hear them howling. They were getting closer and closer, and that's an area that we can't carry weapons in because we don't want to be arrested, but you got to have some type of protection. Martin has a huge sword and a knife, and I'm carrying what I can carry, and Martin Groves is in the truck, and he's really sick. And after Beth calls, Martin gets up. She hangs up. He hears the whole thing she said. Martin hears the whole thing. We're all looking kind of shocked and kind of, like, what do we do now? And Martin gets up as sick as he was, walks right by us, walks right by the fire, walks straight into the woods. I say, "Hey, don't go in the woods by yourself, man. You can't go by yourself in the woods." He just kept walking, wouldn't listen to me. And I got up to go chase after him. He just walked on into the woods. I couldn't even see him. Then I hear him chanting out real loud something, but it was loud. I couldn't understand exactly what he was saying because he was facing away from us in the woods, but I could hear it. And he comes back and he goes, "Everything's all right now." He goes and goes back to his vehicle, reclines back, and he's still trying to recover from that being zapped that happened to him. All of a sudden, it's so quiet, you didn't hear a pin drop. We didn't hear another howl the rest of the night. We didn't see another Bigfoot. We didn't see anything.
No.
And I asked him the next day, I said, "Man, what did you do?" He said, "Well, you know how I feel these things. I went in there and I told them, in the name of Jesus, I recited the Lord's Prayer." That was the answer. All these creatures know what Jesus Christ is. They all know. How do they all know?
It's fascinating. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
thank you. Go on, Chris. Are we doing more questions?
Yeah, more questions. Yeah, we've got loads
I'll
to get
do all
through.
you want. I'm good. Y'all go ahead and do what we got to do.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll run through them then, because Crystal, myself, and Lorraine will probably get punished if we don't ask a few questions.
Yeah,
So,
let's get through these. So, Darrell, what do you think may happen if and when definitive proof is made public to the Bigfoot? Do you think they will be left alone or not?
That's a question I don't believe I've ever been asked that before, but I would probably say that you'll probably have more people looking for them, because there's a lot of people, as we know, that believes everything the government tells them. And unfortunately, I don't believe anything the government tells me. But, it's a lot of people believe what they're told, and that's okay, but if people if the government admits, hey, these things are real, they're out in the woods, I'm sure you're probably going to have those skeptical people that never thought they existed out there trying to see one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Next question. Andy's asking, do you think Bigfoot is natural or supernatural, or perhaps both?
Both.
Both.
I think he has supernatural. Look what they can do to trees. I've seen trees as big as 6 inches now. That's a pretty good size around tree, 6 inches. I've seen it twisted like a twig. Now, I don't even know how anything has that kind of strength. But, I mean, I'm talking about completely twisted, just twisted like a twig. It just, and snapped at the top. So, you could tie a truck to that. There we go. Yeah. Yep. You could take a truck and a chain and pull on that for hours and couldn't do that.
Well, what kind of strength? And this isn't 6 inch. This is as thick as your forearm. But
Right.
What kind of strength could twist that?
Yeah,
It's beyond me.
There's a film. I don't know if you've seen it or not. I've seen several personal films that people have sent me over the year. They don't want to share on the internet or YouTube or in a group, but they'll send it to me and let me see it. And I've had a couple pictures of one in Oregon at a logging camp with a Bigfoot. Now this guy he's a good distance from it, probably 100 yards from it, but he's got on camera this thing picking up a 50-gallon drum full of fuel that gasoline is in, and it throws this drum 72 feet.
Jeez.
Now you're talking about, what are we talking about there? 400 or 500 pounds?
Yeah. Incredible.
And then there's another one of a logging camp. I don't know. I'll take it back. It's some kind of construction they're doing in Alaska. And this has been on YouTube and a couple of channels of a large Bigfoot throwing a tree. And this tree is, it's probably 12, 14 inches round, and it's long, and it throws it a long distance. I don't know how far, but a long way.
But there's a tree that are put upside down, isn't there? What I mean?
Yeah, Alaska's full of that kind of stuff. The trees stuck upside down, the roots exposed at the top. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even though obviously a lot of these creatures are enormous and very muscular and huge,
sure,
the strength seems to go beyond that as well,
Absolutely.
and the speed from what I've read. Particularly the Dogman seem to display, even though they're huge, they seem to display supernatural speed.
All these creatures, even if you look at, I don't know, I don't know everything scientific, and I wish I knew more than I do, but I remember quite a few years ago that they determined the strength that even a chimpanzee has. A chimpanzee, a monkey, the chimpanzee, the strength, they have the strength of like 10 men.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And we're talking about, a creature that's smaller than us. And you got a creature the size of something. I've never personally seen a Bigfoot any taller myself than 8 foot or a little bit better than 8 foot.
You're big fella. You're 6'5", are you?
I'm 6'5", and I've seen a lot of them around the 8 foot or a little bit more range. Now, my friend Billy's seen a 12-footer, and there's several other my friends that's seen bigger ones than that, but I haven't. But you take an 8 foot, for example, an 8'2" roughly creature that weighs 800 to 1,000 pounds and leaves a footprint a size 20-inch track, and it's in the ground roughly 3 inches where the weight of him is mashed down into hard dirt. you multiply that times a strength factor that they actually have. I think it was Thinker Thunker that does a lot of these videos and proves that these things are real or not real. And the factor that they come up with is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. It's like the strength. I believe the one that I seen was the strength of 2 elephants pulling a tree.
You know, it sounds ridiculous, but you can kind of believe it. When you talk about the trees planted upside down and everything else, it's like, you've got to listen to the stories of what people are saying. The huge rocks that they're throwing like tennis balls. That's interesting. I want to get to questions, and I know Chris does. So I'll stop because I was going to ask you something else, and then we'll not get a question. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, Tanya's asking, Darrell, have you stayed in the LBL and have you seen Sasquatch there?
Oh my gosh, I've been in the LBL for most of my life. I've been there camping with family members or friends before I got into Sasquatch or anything like that. I've seen Sasquatch many times in the LBL, and I camped there hundreds of times. So I don't know the number, but a lot of times, and we don't always see something there. We don't, but we do a lot of times. And the very strange thing about the LBL is it is the strangest place that I've ever been in my entire life when nightfall hits.
Really?
I can't even explain. You can drive in the daytime. You get a weird feeling when you cross through the gate that said, "Welcome to the land between the lakes." But at nighttime, it's like a whole different place. There's so much strangeness that goes on there. And I hear people say, well, we stayed at the LBL for a week and we didn't hear nothing or see nothing. Well, I believe that too. Some people just, some reason, don't ever see anything or have anything happen to them. Very rare. But there's a lot of people that go in there and see more than they want to see.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, this is an interesting question. Do you think Claudia Ackley would still be alive if she didn't get involved with cryptids?
Well, several people has talked to me about that lately, and I would like to say no, but I would probably say yes, truthfully.
Thank you.
John Paul Body. Hi, Darrell. What are your thoughts on how Bigfoot and other similar creatures interact with animals like bear, wolves, native species to the areas that are seen and encountered? You mentioned earlier the crows, so you obviously feel there's some that they have this connection, do you?
Certainly. I know they do. I have no doubt in my mind they have connection with those animals. And I think those animals take care of them, and they also take care of them. But, my people, which I relate to my people, I have a little bit of Indian blood in me, American Indian blood, Lakota Sioux, which my grandmother was Lakota Sioux Indian, and my grandfather was part Cherokee Indian. And my grandmother said it all. She said, we call them the Chayutanka. And the Chayutanka, which I could speak most of the Lakota Sioux language, the Chayutanka means great elder, ruler of the forest. That's what they call the Bigfoot.
Fabulous. That's good. And just before we get to the question, I know we're tight for time. John Paul Body, we've still got to meet. That guy's had a few experiences, and thanks for giving us support, John.
Yeah, thanks, John. Lee Roscoe. Stan Gordon had a report in the 60s of 2 ladies waiting for a lift and they saw Bigfoot carrying an orb. Can you tell us, Darrell, where the orb subject comes into it?
Well, we're going back to what I talked about earlier. I don't know, but I do believe that they're connected to the orb. Now, the same person I mentioned a few minutes ago, Beth Collinsworth, that lives in Lebanon, Tennessee, my close friend, admin in my group, right not far from Jennifer Appleton, another lady that's very close and had tons of experiences with this same type thing. Beth actually has a orb that stays around her house just about every night. It's there, and it goes around the house. It's either on the roof, just hovering, or it's around the house. And I've got many a picture of it. You can actually see at what looks to be a Bigfoot face in it, and it's a blue-colored orb.
Right.
So I don't doubt that that could possibly be them cloaking or some type of interdimensional activity. I don't have evidence of that. I'm only speculating.
Okay, thank you.
Lee Roscoe, another Lee Roscoe. When you saw the Bigfoot, Darrell, did it sound light-footed, or the sound of? Did it have the weight to it?
Let me make sure I understand that question.
I think he's on about footfall, Darrell. Did it sound really light on its feet, or?
Yes, it actually did, because I never heard it. I never heard it come out of. I seen the cane thicket moving when it was. Are you talking about my first experience? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah,
I would think so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I seen the cane thicket moving, and this cane can get 12, 15 foot tall, and it's so thick you can't walk through it. So I figured it was a huge deer coming out of there. I'm thinking this must be a massive deer, but then it was moving and swaying as it was coming through to the middle to the outside. And yes, I would say it was light-footed, because I never heard it go in. And when it jumped that creek, it was very quiet going down the trail right in front of me, the game trail. And it's pretty amazing how they can walk that quietly, but they can.
But there's people talk about them moving like they're on a conveyor belt, though, aren't they? Just so smooth, they're almost gliding.
Hey, the dog man Martin Groves and I seen in October of 22 in Land Between the Lakes that was unbelievable. That went from a bluish colored mist to a gray colored dog man that was huge. It didn't walk behind our truck. It glided behind our truck. Like it didn't even take a step. It just glided.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we've answered. I think Darrell's answered that one. There's just a question here, Darrell, about missing time and electrical equipment failure. And you have mentioned.
I've had the electrical equipment. I've had the electrical equipment happen twice. I've only had the missing, what I think to be missing time, happen once.
Yeah, Stephen Collins asking, do you think? I mean, I know you've touched on this one as well. Do you think we could communicate by speech with them, or would would they understand us?
They know 100%. They know exactly what we're saying. They know our language. They know what our words mean. They have their own language. They know what other languages are. Like I'm talking about the American Native language that I know some parts and words from. They know what some of that means. They definitely knew what Chayitanka was. I tried a lot of things trying to communicate with these creatures, and I was gaining a lot of ground, but then I lost them. But it takes a lot of time to gain these creatures' trust. It just takes a lot of time.
And patience, I would think.
True, both.
Yeah, Paul Lee's asking, have you shown Darrell the footprint that you cast just recently? You got it to hand?
I sent it to, by the way, people, I did send it to Jeff Meldrum. I've sent him an image. I've not heard anything back. I don't know where I've put it. Leave it with me. You carry on, guys, and I'll find it. Okay, well, Paul, try and dig that out. We'll jump on to the next question, Lorraine, please. Darrell, do you think they can also turn tree? Yeah, Darrell does think they can turn. The question they're asking you, can they turn trees upside down and drive them into the ground? And we know, you just said that yes, they can.
I definitely believe they're able to do that.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, went into a bit of remote woodland and found one footprint with a load of road deer tracks at the back of it at the side of a stream. Came back the next day and got a cast.
Wow, that's a big one.
But I'm not going to make any claims, Darrell, because I really don't know. Plaster of Paris, and I went and got it the next day. And people were asking me to send the cast to Jeff Meldrum, or images of it. So I have, and I haven't heard anything back yet. To me, the toes look too big. I don't know what I'm. You know what I mean? It's just weird.
Now, a lot of times, I used to cast a lot when I was into this earlier when I first started, but and a lot of those casts I lost or they got broken at conferences I took them to, and then I got broken by the kids and different things. But I don't even think I have many of them anymore. If I
very close to where I've found this, but in the trees. And I know we're short for time here, but in the trees, about 12 foot up, some of the trees that are still that foot round, they're broken and twisted.
So you're in the UK finding this?
Oh yeah, we are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's another gentleman who does podcasts from the UK, and you probably know Daniel, but he's invited me to this cryptid con thing he's having over there ever since he started having it. And he's having another one this year. But he's a nice young man. He's a young boy that does some podcasts. But anyway, he has some tracks too, but nothing like what you have. But I believe these creatures are on every continent of the entire world myself. Yeah. They may be in a different form or a different type of them, but I believe they're all over the world.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we time for any more, Chris? Are we?
Yeah. Mike Disable Welshman is asking, has Darrell ever thought about writing a book?
Oh, that's kind of funny because my lady's been on me for I don't know how long to write my book, and I've actually started writing a couple times, and I'm one of those guys that's OCD. If I feel like I've left something out or I forgot something, and I'll tear it up and start over. And then Martin Groves has been on me for I don't know how long. And Ryan Moorhead tells me I need to write one, and I hear that. And of course, Barton has told me for years, Barton, I need to write a book. But yeah, I would, I'm not saying I won't write a book. I'm still interested, and I've thought real seriously about doing it. It's just, there's so many books out there that people have written, and some of those authors are so good, and I've read quite a few of them. I'm not a big reader guy. I've got to really find something to really be interested in to read it. But I've always been that way. I have to have something to keep my attention. But I've thought about doing an audio book is what I've thought about doing. So somebody can just plug it in and hear me talk instead of having to read. But
that's a great idea, Darrell. Do you know what? Don't worry about the other books out there, because what I've heard tonight and obviously over the last few years from you is it's amazing. Some of these encounters are incredible. They're some of the best and I know this subject pretty well. Your encounters are amazing, so don't be shy about putting it out there, because people will definitely buy it and be interested for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I'm not anything special. I tell people that all the time. I've just been I don't know if I'm blessed or marked or what I am, but my grandmother always told me that I had special abilities that I'd understand one day. And I think I'm starting to understand them, because I've had so many things happen to me in the wilderness and the woods, and not all of it's good. But I mean, I've had some scary times out there. But
well, you've got to have a bad day to know what a good day is, Darrell, haven't you? So you've lived.
That's very well said, Paul. Very well said.
Mark Moorhead's asking Darrell, what did they look like in the face?
Well, I think I said before, I've seen what I believe. I don't know how many different types there are. After my first encounter, I didn't have any way to look up these creatures. My granddad called them a woodbugger. And I went to several libraries, and after searching and searching, there was no internet to go on. That if there was, I didn't know how to do it. And I found a book, and when I opened it up, it had the top 10 type of Bigfoot. I'll never forget the book. And the number one, I don't remember what it was called, but the number two was called the woodbugger. And it looked identical to what I'd seen, except for the eyes. The eyes were red, and the one that I seen were black. And it had 10 different types in there. Now, I don't know, there may be 20 different types. I don't know how many different types are out there. Maybe there's not that many, but the ones I've seen on the river now, they were more like the Patterson Gimlin type. They didn't have a cone head, but they looked more lots of hair, but more of that Patterson Gimlin type, if you know what I'm talking about, the patty.
Yeah.
It looked more like that one. And then the other one that I've seen in the Blue Ridge Mountains that I believe was different than those two. The Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia in I guess it was 2011. I got lost in there for 3 days. But the one I seen there was more different than those two. It had more of the cone shape to it. And it was walking away from me. I seen it walking toward me, then I seen it walking away from me. Broad daylight on a creek bank in the middle of nowhere. And it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't friendly. It just looked at me and then it walked away. So it was different looking. So I really can't tell you. You know, the first one I seen was the ugliest thing that I've ever seen that could be real. I can say that.
Right.
The second one I seen was not an ugly creature. It looked more human. It had curly hair all over its body. The hair was more under its eyes, under the eyes. It wasn't right around the eye, and the forehead was open with hair on it, but there was this patch of leathery skin there. All the strange things, all the ones I've seen, and I've seen quite a few of them, and I'm sure I've seen some of them numerous times. They've all been black. I haven't seen a brown one. I haven't seen a red one. I haven't seen a white one, but they've all been black.
Wow, interesting.
I don't know why that is. I've heard other people seeing different color ones, but I haven't.
I think we're going to have to make this the last question. I think
we haven't had to do it, Darrell. You've just made it so easy for us.
Yeah, I mean this is a tricky one, Darrell.
I'm glad to be on here with you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a tricky question, Darrell. So don't feel like you have to answer this. He's just asking, what do you make of the Todd Standing photos or the footage?
Well, you know what I think about Todd Standing. It may not be what you want to hear. I think Todd Standing was a really good researcher when he started. I think he had a lot of credible pictures that he shared. I really believe that. I think he was really credible. I think what happened to Todd Standing is what happens to a lot of people that I've seen happen to. I have a real close friend that I think the world of, and I kind of lost a little confidence in him, and he's up in Canada over some stuff that came out that he posted last year that just blew my mind. But I think Todd run into the point where he couldn't produce everything that he needed to produce to keep Todd on top of the totem pole. And I think some of the stuff was not saying it wasn't real, but it definitely wasn't as credible as what he produced first. So, you know, when you're out with Les Stroud, the Survivor man, Les Stroud is about as straight up as they come, and I'll be with him at the Beachfoot here back in July. And Les Stroud, if you don't know who Les Stroud is, he has a show called Survivor Man, and Les Stroud spent quite a few weeks with Todd Standing in the mountains.
He did, yeah.
So if Les Stroud has a little bit of credibility toward you and lets you hang out with him for a week, you can't be all bad.
I would agree.
Yes, Darrell, that's a really good assessment actually of Todd Standing. I agree with exactly everything you've said there. Such a shame really that he did that, but at the same time, I say the same thing. Is that he's still not many people can do what he does and get out there.
Well, I think we're one of the only groups that I still allow Todd Standing's pictures to be posted in the group. I'm not saying that they're not real. Some of them are very questionable, but and we don't see those posted very often. But we see some of the ones that looked really credible that he posted in the beginning. And the one where he's got the Bigfoot that he's got on film running up the side of a bank is just absolutely incredible. There is no way possible a human being could run up a bank that's probably straight up like this creature did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's the end. Sorry, guys, we've got tons of questions left for Darrell. Darrell, will you come back on at some point?
I always come back on for you, Paul, and you too, Chris.
Yeah,
thanks. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, Darrell. I thought I knew about all that, but there's some things in there that I didn't know. Amazing. I really enjoyed it. So thank you again for coming on, guys. Thanks for your support tonight, and thanks for watching. Tonya Morrison, thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate that. And we'll see you guys next week for next week's show. Look, and that'll come around quick as they do. So, Paul, anything to add to that?
No, I've just enjoyed it. Darrell's made it so easy for me and you, Chris. Darrell, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for having me again, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you.
No, it's been brilliant, Darrell. Thanks a lot. See you soon, guys. See you later.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.